Okay, now that we have given you a solid base of information, we are going to dive into what you came here to learn, how to be a summer inspector. This final module will be split into two main portions. First, we will cover what you will be looking for when inspecting the trees. This will include a background on the materials we will provide you with, as well as an in-depth look at how to complete a tree inspection from start to finish. Then, we will cover how you will be reporting your data back to us once you have completed your inspections. To start things off, let's take a look at the materials that you will have with you when you are out in the field. You will each be receiving a clipboard from a Friends of Trees staff that will be delivered to your home a few weeks prior to your first inspection deadline on June 15th. It will contain all of the materials you will need to complete your inspections. The first thing you will find is a map of the area where you will be completing your inspections. As you can see, this map is an overview of all of the different homes that you will be visiting. When you receive your map, you will want to make sure that the number at the top of your map matches the number that appears within the polygon. If for some reason it does not match, please let us know so that we can make sure you have the correct information. The thick black line demonstrates a boundary that encompasses all of the homes where you will be visiting trees. And if you look within that boundary line, you can see bullet points that each have a number next to them. Each of those bullet points represents one home on your assigned route, and the number signifies the number of trees that you will be inspecting at each home. Please note that if there are any bullet points on your map that are not within your assigned boundary line, those trees are not on your assigned route and will be visited by another summer inspector. This map is a great resource once you make your way to your first stop, as it can help you navigate from property to property without needing the assistance of your phone. The next thing you will find on your clipboard are two identical data sheets. These are the sheets where you will be recording all of your inspection data. You will be receiving two because you will be completing 2 rounds of inspections this summer, one with a due date of June 15th and one with a due date of August 1st. Again, when you receive your clipboard, please make sure that the route number in the upper left-hand corner matches the corresponding route number on your map. To the right of the route number and due date, you will find a place to record your name and the date during which you complete your inspections. Remember, you are more than welcome to spread these inspections out over a couple of days. Moving down to the data table, the first column you see on the left will be the list of properties that you're tasked with inspecting. You may find that your sheet might have the same address listed multiple times, as is the case with this first property on Duck Court. Don't worry, that is not a mistake. That just means that that property planted more than one tree with us this season. It's also important to note that the street addresses are listed numerically and in most cases should not be followed in order. You will want to make sure you reference your map to ensure that you are making your way from property to property in an efficient way. To the right of the addresses, you will find the tree species that were planted there, along with the location where you will find each tree. Some may be planted in the yard, some along the front of the home, and if it's a corner lot, there may also be trees planted along the side street. Columns 1 through 8 and the notes column are for you to fill in, and we'll get a little bit more into what that looks like shortly. Before we do though, I want to touch on the final material that you will find on your clipboard, which will be a stack of door hangers. The door hangers are an educational resource for you to fill out and leave with the tree parents when you are inspecting their trees. They're a way for you to share your observations and provide constructive feedback for folks. You will only receive enough door hangers to leave one at each house for each round of inspections, so please make sure when you're distributing them that you only leave one, even if there is more than one tree. All right, so now that we have covered what's on your clipboard, we want to touch base on a couple of other things to keep in mind before you start inspecting trees. Before you leave your house, you're going to want to make sure you're dressed for success. As a representative of Friends of Trees, it's important to wear your volunteer Friends of Trees t-shirt when you're out inspecting in your neighborhood. Not only does it help a tree parent identify you when you arrive at a home to inspect a tree, but a lot of folks are very interested in the work we do, and they love to see Friends of Trees volunteers out in the community supporting our urban forest. As we are still in the midst of a pandemic, we are asking everyone to please wear a mask when you are out inspecting trees, regardless of whether or not you personally have had your vaccinations. Once you are all set, you want to grab your clipboard and head out. The next thing you're going to want to double check is the property address. When you arrive at the first home, please take a moment to double check that you are at the correct house number on the correct street. You may encounter instances where there are numerous homes in a row that have all gotten trees with us, and you will want to make sure you are writing down the data on the correct line. And on that note, once you have confirmed the correct house, you will want to make sure you are inspecting the correct tree. Many of the homes on your route have gotten more than one tree with us this past year, so again, you'll just want to make sure that you are recording your data on the correct line. You can do so by looking at the tree tag on each tree to make sure you are looking at the correct species of tree. Once you have confirmed this information, your last step before starting your inspection, if you feel comfortable doing so, is to knock on the door and say hi. We encourage you to introduce yourself to the resident and let them know a little bit about the summer inspector role. If you feel comfortable, you can verbally share some tree care tips or answer any tree care questions they may have. Some of the trees may be located in the backyard, and in that case, you will want to ask permission and for the best way to access the yard before entering. However, if no one is home and you are comfortable entering the backyard without a tree parent present, you are welcome to do so. If people ask you questions and you are unsure of the answers, please don't hesitate to direct them to us. There is contact information on the bottom of the door hanger, and we are generally pretty quick to respond. The one thing that we do ask is that you do not promise anyone a refund or free tree replacement. If someone does request something like that, please direct them to us. Now, let's get into our next portion, where we will cover the various conditions that you will be looking for when you are completing your inspections. To do so, let's take a look back at the data recording sheet and focus on columns 1 through 7. As you can see here, the tree inspections are broken down into two separate categories: site conditions and tree conditions. With this first category, you will be assessing the condition of the area around the tree. This will help us understand if the tree is being well cared for or if there are some things that might need to be improved upon. You will be looking for soil moisture, the presence of mulch, and whether or not there are weeds or grass present around the tree. For the second category, you will be looking at the tree itself. You will assess the bark, the branches, whether or not there's any epicormic growth or suckers present, and you will let us know if the tree has leaves. If you determine that one of these conditions is true for a particular tree, you will mark an X in the corresponding box. To start things off, you will be looking at the soil moisture. As we already discussed, supplemental water through the dry months is critical for the successful establishment of young trees. Remember, healthy roots are critical for long-term survival. We want to encourage the roots to grow downward and outward with deep and frequent watering at the drip line. To test for soil moisture, you can do what we call the pencil test. To do this test, you will insert a pencil, a chopstick also works very well, about 2 to 4 inches into the soil. Make sure to peel back the mulch so you can access the soil. If the pencil comes up with some moisture or clumps of soil attached to it, the soil is adequately moist. If the pencil comes up dusty or you can't insert the pencil at all because the soil is too hard, the soil is too dry. It's important to remember that even if the top of the soil feels dry, that doesn't mean that the tree isn't being watered. With the deep and frequent watering method that we recommend, the topsoil will in fact often appear dry. That's why it's important to check below the surface. If you determine that the soil is dry, please don't forget to mark an X in column 1. The next question you will be asking yourself is the tree mulched? As discussed earlier, mulching the root zone of the tree is the second most important step a person can take to care for their tree. If there is no mulch present on the tree, mark an X in column 2. You will also want to encourage the tree parent to apply mulch to their tree, and you're welcome to let them know that there's free mulch available at the Friends of Trees office on MLK. If you find yourself in a situation where technically there is mulch on the tree, but it's not done correctly, what should you do? If you find yourself looking at a mulch volcano, feel free to take a moment and pull the mulch back away from the trunk. You may also find that some trees do have mulch, but it is scattered and definitely does not follow that 3-3-3 rule. And in that case, you definitely want to leave a note on the door hanger to let the tree parents know that they should look into getting more mulch. You also want to make that comment in the note section of your data sheet so that our staff has that on file as well. For either of these scenarios, please don't mark an X in column 2. That box is solely there to designate the absence of mulch. Next, you will be looking for the presence of weeds or grass in the root zone. And weeds and grass in the root zone can be problematic for a couple of reasons. First, they compete with the tree for water and nutrients. Second, weeds or grass near the trunk of the tree invite the use of lawnmowers and string trimmers, as Litzy shared earlier. This leaves this tree more susceptible to bark damage, which can be fatal in a young tree. If weeds or grass are present, mark an X in column 3 and encourage tree parents to hand pull any affected areas. You can also remind them that a thick layer of mulch will suppress weed growth and hopefully mitigate the need for further weed removal in the future. Once you have completed your site assessment, you can then move on to assessing the condition of the tree itself. Some of the information you collect will help guide residents on immediate steps they can take to remedy tree issues, as well as inform Friends of Trees staff about any concerns that we may need to address. The first thing you will be looking at is the bark. Do you see any bark damage on the tree? As we discussed earlier, bark damage is dangerous for trees because it disrupts the flow of water and nutrient transport. Young trees are especially vulnerable, and because it is so easy to sustain injuries in urban environments, bark damage can be one of the leading causes of urban tree failure in young trees. When looking for damage to the bark, keep your eye out for any abnormalities such as gashes, scrapes, or gouges. You will often be able to see the sapwood just below the bark surface, as you can see in these two examples on the right. It can often be found on the lower trunk, which, as we spoke about earlier, is related to lawnmowers and car doors. However, passersby and moving vehicles can also inflict injury on the branches, so don't forget to check there. If you do find any bark damage, don't forget to mark an X in column 4. If you are unsure, please don't hesitate to take photos and email them to us. We love to get photos because it helps us understand the problems without having to visit the tree. The next thing you will be looking for are any broken or dead branches on the tree. These are particularly problematic to leave on a tree because if they are broken off or removed improperly, the tree will not be able to seal itself off properly at the branch bark color that Litzy touched on earlier. Broken branches should be fairly easy to spot, but dead branches might be a little bit harder. Look for any bare branches on an otherwise full canopy. Dead branches will often be less pliable and appear darker or discolored. If you're unsure, you can try the scratch test. If you scratch the bark with your nail and the tissue underneath is green, that's the cambium layer, and that means the tree is still alive in that area. But if you don't see any green, that's a pretty good indicator that the branch is dead. If you do find any broken or dead branches on the tree, please mark an X in column 5 and encourage the tree parent to remove them using proper pruning techniques. Please do not attempt to remove any broken or dead branches yourself. Next, you will look for any suckers or sprouts growing on the tree. And for those of you who have not heard of these before, suckers are basically new growth that sprout up from the base of the tree, as you can see in these photos here. Sprouts, on the other hand, are dormant buds that sprout along the trunk of the tree. This is also called epicormic growth because the dormant buds are called epicormic buds. They are found along the trunk below the lowest branches. They are often a sign that a tree might be undergoing some type of stress, but this is not always the case. There are some species that are particularly prone to sucker. Suckers and sprouts should be removed for a couple of reasons. First, they divert valuable energy away from root and crown development, and as we discussed earlier, it's important that a tree puts as much energy towards strong root development early on in its life. Also, their attachments are very weak, which can be problematic because they will be increasingly susceptible to breakage as the limb grows and puts on weight. If you find any suckers or sprouts on the tree, please mark an X in column 6 and encourage the tree parent to remove them immediately. Much like broken or dead branches, we ask that summer inspectors do not remove any sucker growth themselves. The last thing you will be looking at on the tree is its leaves or its needles, and you will be answering the question, is the tree missing 50% or more of its canopy? It's important to note that this column is specifically intended to report the absence of leaves. Please only mark an X in column 7 if the tree is missing leaves on 50% or more of its canopy, as is the case with the 2 trees you see here, or if all of the leaves on the tree are clearly dead. That means they're brown and dry and crinkly and there are no signs of life on the tree. Marking an X in this box will automatically prompt a visit from Friends of Trees staff, as a tree that is reported as missing its leaves is likely dead or dying. As such, if you could please leave us any additional comments or notes in the notes section on your data sheet, that would help us out a lot. Let us know exactly how much canopy you think is missing or any other pertinent information you think we should know before visiting the tree. Something that has historically been confused with no leaves designation is a canopy that has sparse leaves like the trees you see here. And while these trees do not have a very full canopy, the leaves are distributed throughout and as such would not warrant an X in the no leaves box. All right, now that we have gone through the 7 criteria you will be looking for while you are inspecting your trees, I will walk you through the last couple of columns on your data sheet, the first of which is the not inspected column. There are a number of reasons that you might not be able to inspect a tree, and that is totally fine. That's why this column exists. If you get to a house and you can't perform your inspection for some reason, please just make sure to mark an X in column 8 and tell us why in the notes column. Some common reasons why you might not be able to inspect the tree include maybe you encountered a locked gate and were unable to access the tree. Maybe you found yourself in a situation where you didn't feel super comfortable going into the backyard. You can definitely skip a tree in that situation. As I said earlier, we ask that everyone please knock before entering, but if you find yourself feeling uncomfortable for any reason, it's totally okay to skip it entirely. If you encounter a dog in the yard and no one is home to bring the dog inside, please do not attempt to inspect that tree anyway for both your safety and for the dog's. Another reason is that the tree might have already been removed by Friends of Trees staff because it was dead. Or maybe you just were not able to find it, which can happen from time to time as well. And lastly, safety. Your safety while you're in the field is our number 1 priority. So please know that if at any point you find yourself in a situation that does not feel safe to you, please remove yourself from that situation. And now onto our final column, the notes column. This is actually one of the most important columns on your data sheet because it's the one place where you can share additional details with us. It lets us know everything that you are not able to communicate in those first 8 columns. And one of the most important ways that this column is used is simply to tell us that the tree looks good. If there was nothing wrong with the tree at all, nothing that warranted an X in the previous 7 columns, then please let us know that in the notes. If you submit your data and the entire row is left blank, the tree will actually be recorded in our system as not being inspected, and it wouldn't get down all of your hard work. You can also use the notes column to differentiate between trees at a multi-tree property. So Say there is one home that got 2 dogwoods planted on their front street. Please use the notes column to designate which tree is being reported on which line. You can use labels such as this is the east tree and this is the west tree, which will help us differentiate between the 2 trees if we need to visit them in the future. The notes column is also the place to note any other tree abnormalities that you noticed or that concerns you or the tree parent. Let us know if there are any signs of pests or disease or any concerns about the leaves, such as crispy edges or droopy or looking yellow. These are helpful notes for us to have in the event that we need to look into the health of the tree in the future. Please also use the notes column to report any leaning or floppy top trees. As new trees settle into the ground, they can develop a bit of a lean over time. Our team will do our best to visit any leaning trees over the next couple of months to straighten them out to ensure that they grow straight. Here are a few examples of leany or floppy top trees. As you can see in this first example, this tree has a fairly straight trunk, but the top is leaning. Our team can address and fix this tree, but we need to do so before it gets too established. In the second example, the entire trunk has a significant lean. If addressed within the first year, our staff can also fix this tree. So please keep your eye out for situations like this, as you are our eyes on the ground and can help us fix these problems before they become permanent. All right, so you have successfully completed inspecting the tree for the 7 categories and filled out your data sheet and the notes section. Your last step before you wrap up and leave that home is to fill out your door hanger. As I shared earlier, this is a great resource to help educate our new tree parents, so please don't forget this step. The door hanger is broken down into 6 sections with a space for comments at the end. Each of the categories you just inspected the tree for has its own box with its own thumb scale rating. When you are filling out the door hanger, you will let tree parents know how they are doing by circling one of the thumbs for each category. If the tree looks great for that category, give it a thumbs up. If it looks okay but could use a little bit of encouragement, give it a neutral thumb. And if it needs attention in that category, give it a thumbs down. But please note that our goal with this is to provide helpful feedback and not to put folks down. Next, you are going to work on your comment section on the back of the door hanger, and this is your area to give feedback. Let folks know what they're doing well and share some helpful tips or recommended areas that they could possibly improve upon. One last thing to note, if you read below the comment section, there is a sentence that says, "This is our first or second trip." Please make sure to circle one of those options, and once you do, go ahead and hang the door hanger and move on to the next home. Before we move on to how you will be reporting your data back to us, let's take a moment to review the material we just covered. Which of the following trees would warrant an X in the no leaves column? If you guessed tree A, you would be correct. While the other 2 trees do appear to have some issues with the leaves, both have a greater than 50% tree leaf canopy cover, and therefore tree A is the only one that would warrant an X in the no leaves column. Next question. What is the best way to manage weeds and/or grass in the root zone? Select all that apply. A, use a lawnmower and/or string trimmer. B, hand pull weeds and grass. C, suppress growth with a thick layer of mulch. Or D, herbicide. If you guessed B and C, you would be correct. Remember, you never want to use a lawnmower or string trimmer near the base of the trunk. The best way to manage weeds and grass in the root zone is to hand pull when they are there, and make sure you have a thick layer of mulch, which will help suppress the growth of weeds and grass. Last question. What should you do if there are suckers present on the tree? Select all that apply. A, pull them off. B, mark an X in column 6. C, stomp on them to suppress their growth, or D, leave a note to the tree parents on the door hanger that they should be removed. If you guessed B and D, you would be correct. You want to make sure to mark an X in column 6 and let tree parents know to remove them. Remember, as a summer inspector, we ask that you do not remove them yourself. Okay, home stretch here. In this final portion, we will go over the steps you will need to take to report your inspection data back to us, as well as touch on some common data entry errors that you will want to avoid. All right, you have completed your inspections. Now what? Your next step will be to report your data back to us using our shared Google document. About 3 weeks prior to the data due date, we will send you an email with the link to the Google document. The subject line will contain the inspection date, either June 15th or August 1st, and the email will also have the link to fill in your data. We send out 2 separate links for each inspection due date, so please be sure during your second round of inspections that the date says August 1st and you are not re-entering into the June 15th Google document. We collect your inspection data by asking you to transcribe your field notes into this document. When you open the Google link to access your data sheet, you will be brought to a landing page. Notice that the landing page states that the document will be locked for editing by 8 a.m. on June 16th, the day after your first inspections are due. As such, please be sure to input all of your data by that date. Your first step will be to navigate to your assigned route number. Along the bottom of the screen, you will see the list of routes ordered numerically. You can use the left and right arrow keys at the bottom of the screen to find your route number. Once you find your number, click on the tab and your electronic data sheet will appear on the screen. Once you have your data sheet pulled up, you will want to confirm that the addresses and corresponding trees on the Google document match those that are on your hard copy data sheet. Once you have confirmed that the addresses are matching, please enter your name and the date that you completed your route. Remember, you are welcome to spread your inspections out over a period of days and do not have to complete them all at once. From there, you can transcribe the health data from your field data sheet to this document. Please only use an X for columns 1 through 8, as any other text within those boxes will cause issues when we try to download the data later. All of the information that you input will be saved automatically, so once you are done copying all of the information from your hard copy to the computer, you are good to close out the window. Now that we've covered how you'll be inputting your data, let's touch on some common errors that you'll want to do your best to avoid when you are working in the Google document. One common mistake that is made by folks is leaving an entire row blank. Please don't forget to input something for every tree that you visit, even if it's just a note that the tree was in good shape. It's super important for us to have any pertinent information on file so that we can be informed in the future if any health questions do come up. Another issue that you will want to avoid is marking anything other than an X in columns 1 through 8. The database we use to download this information cannot interpret anything other than an X in those columns. So when you write words or add other notes, it does not allow the data to be downloaded. Please do not put any information down in any columns other than 1 through 8 or the notes column within the data table. Again, when we download this information, if there is anything that has been recorded in the address, tree species, or location column, it will halt our download, so please be sure to include any information like directional data or other notes about addresses in the notes column. The last problem that we have encountered in the past is when inspectors try to enter data into this document using a phone or tablet. This Google document will contain tabs for over 150 routes and will be utilized by all of our summer inspectors. As such, it is rather cumbersome. To ensure that no mistakes are made, we ask that summer inspectors enter this information on a desktop computer. If you don't have access to or don't enjoy using the computer, there are a couple different ways you can get your inspection data to us. You're welcome to snap a photo of your completed data sheet and email it to us. Just please be sure that we can read all of the information on the sheet. You can also drop it in the mail and send it to our office. If you choose to do this, just please let us know ahead of time so we know to keep an eye out for it. And lastly, if you're going to be in the area, you are welcome to drop it at our office on MLK. As we are still closed to the public at this time, you're welcome to slip it into the mail slot next to our front door. Now, before we wrap this module up, let's do a quick review. As a summer inspector, how many inspections will you perform this summer and what are the deadlines? A, 1 inspection, July 1st. B, 3 inspections, June 1st, July 1st, and August 1st. C, 2 inspections, June 15th and August 1st. Or D, 1 inspection, July 15th. If you guess C, you would be correct. There are 2 inspections. Please keep those dates in mind, June 15th and August 1st. When recording your data in columns 1 through 8, what can you enter into the boxes? A, we have a check mark. B, we have an X. C, yes or no. And D, smiley face. If you chose B, you would be correct. We only want X's in those boxes as that is the only thing that our program will recognize when the data is downloaded. Last question. Which of the following are important notes to record in the notes column? Please select all that apply. A, tree is behind a locked gate. B, tree is leaning. C, tree parent is concerned that the tree doesn't have many leaves. D, tree looks good. E, tree leaves look droopy. And F, easternmost of 3 trees. If you selected all of them, you would be correct. Remember, the more notes that we can get in the notes column, the better. There's no notes that are bad notes. We appreciate all of the information you are able to provide us. Thank you again so much for the time you spent going through this training. We know that it's not easy to stare at a screen for an hour, and we really appreciate you taking the time to review this information at home and inspecting trees with us this summer. If you only take a few things away from today, it's to do your best to be encouraging with the tree parents. Even if the tree is not in great shape, please try to find something positive to share with the tree parent. Our goal with these inspections is always to be educational and helpful, so please try to keep that in mind when you are providing feedback. Second, proper water and mulching are the 2 best things you can do for a young tree. Make sure to highlight these conditions when you're out in the neighborhood and talking to folks. It's so important that these trees receive proper water and mulching, and you can never say that enough to folks. And lastly, don't forget that the inspections must be completed and the data submitted to us by the deadlines of June 15th and August 1st. If for some reason the deadline is approaching and you don't think you will have time to complete your inspections, please let us know that as soon as possible. It's super important for all of these trees to be inspected within the same time frame. So let us know as soon as you know that you're not going to be able to complete your route so that we can do our best to make accommodations before the deadline. Don't close things out. You have one more thing on the list to do. Your last step will be to complete the review below. And please don't forget to do this. Don't forget to fill it out and press submit, as a completed review is your only way to communicate to us that you have finished the training and you are ready to start inspecting trees. So unfortunately, if we do not receive a completed review from you, you will not be on our list to receive a route of trees to inspect this summer. There are a few review questions, but it mostly just serves as our opportunity to gather information from you, like where you would like your clipboard delivered and your preferred t-shirt size. It will also be your place to submit questions and provide us with feedback, so please don't forget to go do that next. It should only take about 10 minutes or so, but it must be completed by midnight on May 17th at the latest. When you are done, I also want to encourage you to check out the downloadable handbook in the resources section at the bottom of this page. It has all of the information that was covered in this training and is a great resource to check in on if you were confused about anything, or it's something that's great to have while you're out inspecting trees as well as a reference. Again, from all of us here at Friends of Trees, thank you, thank you, thank you, and I hope you all have a great time inspecting trees this summer.